What I've been working on over the last month or so is a simulated testing database. So the purpose of this is to allow admin to more efficiently test the application, and we'll see how that is later on. So there were a couple problems like when I just entered the code base as it relates to how sample data is being loaded in. So first I had to manually execute a command, so a load sample data command, um, to actually have sample data. It was actually also it was being loaded in from JSON files where the different items were predefined, different documents were predefined. And I just wasn't aware of that previously. So you also have the problem of new developers coming in and not knowing that you could load sample data and they could waste time like adding their own. Okay, so these are basically the features, the approach that I took, the features that I added to the both the Talawa admin and Talawa API. So allowed allowed had the ability to create an organization. So a single organization was created with 11 members, two of which were made admins, and 5 events and posts generated. It's completely lorem ipsum, and it was all generated through using Faker.js. Then you have the ability to delete organizations. So if you wish to unload the data that was loaded in, you can do that. So if you have data that you were using previously, or even in production, you could remove the data that is being added here. So each item is linked to a sample data item. I created a sample data collection. It is basically the core of the entire thing, and I'll get to it in the next slide, I believe. Okay, so this is the structure of the sample data collection. As you can see, we have a ID. This is like the ID of the actual entity. So, and this tells where the collection of the item. So this is a user with ID 64C000, so and so on. And this is of course an organization. The reason this is important is that it acts as like a relationship table, which makes it easier for us to like remove the data later on. So we could iterate through these and say, okay, it basically allows us to identify all the entities that are basically sample data. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, so the benefits of this approach is, of course, the admin has more control over the data loading process, and they can now decide whether they want to, when they want to load or unload the sample data. The data was generated with Faker.js, which makes it more realistic. There's no longer a need for manual sort of startup as you can create and remove the sample organization from the interface itself, and the data is randomly generated. This is important because it's closer to how the application will operate, like in a real life scenario where you have different people, sorry, different names and such, different emails. This is basically a summary of all the changes that I made. So I extended the delete organization component, delete organization component in settings to also support the removal of sample organization. Actually, this wasn't implemented, so only my implementation is here. I did remove organization button. I did a create sample organization button on the organization creation form, which is on the dash list, I believe. I'm not sure. Okay. Talawa API, on the Talawa API, I created, add the create sample organization mutation, remove sample organization mutation, and the is sample organization query, which would allow me to determine whether an organization is a sample organization. This is important because later on you'll see I assign a sample tag all the sample items so you can distinguish it from the other items, other organizations and interface. I don't have much for design considerations. I'll take some questions after I explain these. So the reason for creating a single organization, well, actually, the idea initially was to create multiple organizations, but we realized that the settings for the organization was on a organizational level, so we decided to only load a single sample organization as it's all we need. And an admin, if one admin loads a sample organization, another admin that is using the application doesn't have to load another sample organization, as that would just be unnecessary. You can reuse the same organization that was previously loaded in by another admin. The interface for loading sample data, of course, solved the problem of having to manually start up the server. So as you sign in, you can just click a button and it will load the sample organization. Then there's the deletion functionality. So if you want to preserve like the data that you were working with before, you can like add the sample organization and remove it. And as I mentioned before, also in production, it would be good to be able to add. How do I keep doing that? Add and remove the sample data. So I'll get into live demo of the. Okay. Okay, so so the first thing is the delete. So wait, what I go? Okay. So first thing to note is this button is delete organization. This one is delete sample organization. So
Hold on. When you're going through, please explain where you're clicking, because that will help people who are watching the video follow through.
go again.
When you're clicking, explain what you're clicking at the time that you're clicking it, because people who'll be watching this video will not be able to see what you're doing as easily.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I get.
Right, so before clicking on a button, say which button you're clicking on so that people can follow better.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I understand now. So I'll be clicking on the delete sample organization button, so you can see that it actually removed the organization. So if we go back, you see that it works, but the implementation for the deletion of a sample organization works a bit differently because of the sample data model that I explained before, where it links the different items that was created as sample data. So I had to I had to implement a different way of deleting the organization. So it
Jamari, can
uses
you also mention how like users are deleted, like sample users are deleted?
okay, so I think I've mentioned that where the sample you iterate through the sample data collection and you look at the ID, you look at the collection name as well, and you'd find that ID in the sample data collection and you'd use that to delete the item from the actual collection. I believe that's it. And here you can create a separated this so you can know that this is definitely for creating a sample organization and it's not in any way linked to this. So create a sample organization and it generates 11 members, 2 admins, posts, and it also generates plugins.
Okay, good.
There was, I believe there was something wrong with that. I'll
Right.
have to look at that after.
Yes, please make sure that that's fixed.
I think it's related to something else that I changed. Yeah.
Go,
Yeah.
rather than troubleshooting right now, just yeah, continue. Okay, good.
In the organization settings, there's also another option to delete sample organizations. So,
Right. Yeah,
well,
that's going to have to change. It's generally good practice not to have the same functionality in multiple different sections of the screen because it just creates
the
confusion.
reason I had 2 options because I implemented this first and then I realized that I had this. So yeah, it's a good idea. I'll remove it.
Yeah, that screen that you're looking at it's going to be completely changed. It's been a source of constant confusion over the years.
Yeah,
So that's part of what Rishabh will be working on.
and
All right.
this is of course this is a regular organization where the functionality is not yet implemented. So trying to think of other things. I don't think there's anything else to it.
All right. So Jamari,
Yeah,
if somebody sets up the Talua at API from scratch, right? They've
yeah,
setting up MongoDB, they've set up the API, and then they log in, try to log into the portal. Um, they would see, I'm assuming they would see no organization, and
yeah,
then they would be able to create the organization and determine whether it's going to be a sample or not, correct?
yeah,
Okay. I that needs to be verified. So what I'd suggest that you work with your mentors to make sure that with the brand new installation of Talua admin and Talua API, that there is no that the user experience is what we expect, that they don't have to do anything from the command line after doing the initial configuration of the API. Okay?
yeah,
And so there, because that has been another area in which we've had difficulties. Now, I know that you're creating this sample organization. Is this something that could be used for testing purposes? So, for example, if the Tallow API GitHub actions are running, could they run against this sample organization to make sure that they're doing the right thing? Or is that not the case at the moment or not planned?
can I go again, please? Like, more simplified.
Right. So if we're the Tallow API, when we are doing pull requests, it goes through a number of tests, right, against the various functions, classes, and methods. And I know that in some cases it generates data, deletes data, etc. Would we be in a position to use this database that you've created as a part of the regular testing for Tallow API and also for Tallow admin.
Are there like any reason why it wouldn't work? Like
Well,
any
I'm not saying that it wouldn't work. I want to know whether we could use it as a part of the GitHub actions, because that would be useful. Because if we could do that, then we would have a consistent reference point against which we would be doing all tests. And so therefore we could use this as a methodology for creating consistent testing all the time. And because the data that you have is randomized, it would be even better, because that would help with making sure that the testing that we do is thorough.
in that case, yes. Yes.
Okay, so all right, so once you've finished with all of this, I would suggest that you work with your mentors to try and figure out a way in which you could start using this new test database as part of our testing, and see how we can start recommending people to use that. So for example, we could automatically import this test data and then use that as a part of the testing to test against, for example, rather than us having to generate it every single time. And that would be very helpful for us. All right, thanks. Does anybody else have any questions?